Right now, the South African Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee is expected to announce its decision on interest rates later on this afternoon. In July, the MPC increased the interest rates by 75 basis points to 5.5%. Some economists point out that high unemployment in South Africa and a shrinking industrial output in the economy require a reduction in interest rates to support spending and private sector investments. To discuss this, Redge Nkosi, the Executive Director and the Head of Research on Macroeconomics, Money and Banking at Firstsource Money, joins us to have this conversation. Reg, great to have you. Thanks so much for being with us on Morning Live.
Thanks very much for having me. Jan, thanks indeed.
So, I mean, obviously there's great reasoning to increase interest rates. We know this. We're seeing the world raising interest rates at the moment. I mean, in fact, yesterday in the US, the Fed raised their interest rates by 75 basis points. So are we just generally following the trends globally? Is that pretty much so what's happening?
Well, in some way, yes. We do follow some trends happening elsewhere, but we also must be cognizant of our own domestic circumstances. So it's not necessarily all about just following what the trend is going up out there. But again, if you have to follow the trends, then which trend? Because in Asia, the inflation there is quite low and the West is quite high. Which one do you choose? Do you go for the Western following system, or do you have to follow the Asians? So I think it has to be dictated by the domestic circumstances around you, not necessarily because Asia or Europe or the US are raising rates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we look at, let's talk margins at the moment. And, you know, I don't think it's if they raise interest rates, it's by how much will the Reserve Bank raise interest rates. Some are predicting perhaps as much as 100 basis points. Others are saying, 75. What do you think?
It could be very irresponsible if they raise it by 100 basis points or even 0.75%. In my view, if they're going to have to raise it, then let them raise it at about 0.5, which is 50 basis points. That at least is going to, help the consumers and the economy as a whole. To have to raise it over that would be irresponsible given the circumstances that surround us. Joblessness, economic growth is not there. By doing so, raising, say, 0.75 or even 100 basis points, you effectively kill the economy. After all, what we should know is the interest rate as a tool is the most, the worst tool you can use for this type of inflation. So to have to raise it to 100 basis points and 0.75 would be so unacceptable, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, so let's just take numbers into account, because we saw yesterday that the inflation, the latest inflation figures came through. A little bit of good news. I mean, not much. I'm just looking at what had happened. I mean, it was in July it was 7.8%. For August it was 7.6%. So slightly better, but slightly better. Is this some good news that perhaps showing maybe slight recovery for us?
Yes, I think the 7.6 is certainly very good news. I think if you look at the circumstances around the world, the forces around us have been moderating a bit. That's why we got the 7.6, not necessarily because the Reserve Bank had increased rates by 75 basis points, no, but I think the oil prices have been a bit low, and we expect that to continue for the next few weeks. But as we go into the end of the year, we should expect these prices to go up. So for now, this respite of 7.6 may as well even go down to 7.5 next month or so. But thereafter, I think the forces are going to be against us.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are seeing oil prices, as you mentioned, and that's a great thing. We are seeing them decreasing. We have been given that little bit of relief at the petrol pumps when we do go there. But that's for petrol. Diesel, however, very different story. And I want to linger on the price of diesel for a little bit, because diesel at the moment is a very in-demand commodity. And the reason I say this is because so many people are obviously using generators at this point in time because of the load shedding. We'll talk about electricity as well and how that's killing our economy. So, when we look for diesel, I mean, industry uses diesel, whether we're talking trucks, we're talking factories, we're talking generators, we're talking everything. And yet petrol goes down, but diesel keeps on going up. We know that diesel isn't regulated, but I mean, is this clever to be raising diesel, the price of diesel, at a time where we are so dependent on it?
It's quite a stunning example of how the public relations actually goes on, not really economics. If the country was really following economics, they should in fact be decreasing diesel, because literally the economy runs on diesel, not petrol. And to have petrol go down and diesel up is quite frankly an annoyance. It's the fact that when we continue doing that as a country, then we're obviously killing ourselves. There's ample space, in my view, by government, in the hands of the Treasury, to pump a bit of subsidy in the diesel side so that the situation can be ameliorated at least. But to have to get diesel going up in a time when the economy is sinking is, quite frankly, not the way to go, not the way to run the economy.
Yeah.
Similarly, we expect prices of electricity to go up. But you remember, NESCOM has been asking huge, hefty increases. That shouldn't actually be going on. Government should be coming in and say, look, let's stamp this increase, out and ensure that the economy gets sufficient relief, and at least employment can begin to pick up in a state where employment is so high. I think that move of having diesel go up is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate and actually a bit tone deaf, if you ask me. I mean, that should be the one place where we look to give people relief on this. I mean, I was just overhearing one business talking to how many liters of diesel when we were in this, well, not when we were, now that we are in this phase of sometimes 8 hours of absolutely no electricity during the working day. I'm not talking during when we're sleeping at night. I'm saying when it's working hours, 8 hours with absolutely no electricity and having to buy diesel to keep their businesses going. I mean, if you think about massive grocery stores keeping fridges going, to the smaller hairdressing salons that need to keep on going with hair dryers and put those on. I mean, liters upon liters of the stuff. What is going to happen if we do not fix up the electricity in this country? Because how much more can we South Africans hold on our shoulders and keep on paying?
My sense is that if the government is not serious, then they can continue not to be decisive about issues of economic growth, issues of subsidizing diesel, issues of looking at the increases in electricity. Frankly, the economy is going to tank quite substantially. Already, if you remember, we had a minus 0.7% growth. What this means, therefore, if we see diesel going up and electricity going up, we may eventually end up with an economy that says, right at the end of the year, we have negative growth. And then unemployment obviously follows. So we are looking at a collapsing economy in the near future if the government doesn't want to decide that, they should ensure that the economy is retrieved. I mean, the citizens, mostly the consumers, have some relief. Should they fail to do that, to act very quickly and decisively, then quite frankly, we're not going to have any economy to talk about.
Yeah. We're hearing some deals coming through where independent power producers, renewable energies, all of those kind of things. Is this the solution? I mean, that's the one question. Is that the solution? And then, of course, I bring in what our former president, Thabo Mbeki, was saying, that, the leadership is severely lacking. Why don't we have the experts that know exactly what to do with the likes of an ESCOM? Why are they not running it? So I talk to leadership and also ask you about, the independent power producers and the deals that were signed. Is that going to help, or is that perhaps not really where the solution lies?
The solution does not lie with the independent power producers, and whether we want it or not. We have seen this in Europe and elsewhere. Even here, we don't have to even want to go and check what's happening in Europe. We have to look right where we are today. They have not succeeded. Already we've got a substantial number of IPPs, independent power producers, jobbing in, but what have they done? Nothing. So the solution, the immediate solution, does not lie with the IPPs. That's a fantasy that the country has been, working on, if you want, or dreaming for quite a while. So the president must get out of this story of IPPs and move quite quickly to ensure that ESCOM, the maintenance of ESCOM, is done quite urgently and by persons who understand the system. Remember, at some point in time, for about 3 years, we didn't have load shedding. It's because of the maintenance which was being done well. But today, this leadership, both at ESCOM and at cabinet level, which is lacking, is what is killing this economy. Frankly, ESCOM can work and we can have power if they're focused. To have to tell us about IPPs, independent power producers, it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about as well the frustrations of workers in the country, because we have spoken to this. I mean, we see the economy and the hammering it's taking, but workers are feeling it. I mean, all of us are feeling it. The fact that, we're working, you don't get salary increases, you're getting cuts, there's no prospects of jobs being created anywhere, and then you get strike action, which is pending everywhere. And the one sector now that we're looking at is, of course, NUMSA. They are demanding to strike. Well, not only NUMSA, but a lot of the major the public sector strike action is wanting to come in the automotive sector. They are demanding an 8% hike. The company's only demanding or giving them a 3% hike. So now they want to bring this to a standstill, as well as many other sectors that we've seen the same thing happening. How do we play a balancing act here? Because the standard of living is going through the ceiling and the workers are not getting paid to continue living at this rate.
I think if we are to be very fair to ourselves, to have to shift the blame on workers is quite, frankly, a game that other countries shouldn't be playing. The workers are barely surviving as we speak, in large measure because of the government's policy. All right? And if this is going to continue, the strikes are just a reminder then that things are falling apart. And should we not take them seriously and continue to mislead the country, in fact, we're misleading as government, South Africa, then everything is gonna really explode. And this is my worry. The July unrest are likely to come about quite quickly. Should we continue to dilly-dally, if you want, and continue to talk about IPPs as a solution? The president has to work up and begin to understand that whatever games that the country has been playing, that should actually go, and be serious indeed to ensure that new leadership at the ESCOM comes into play or is installed. Even at cabinet level, the minister responsible for ESCOM right now, Minister Godan, unfortunately is not doing what he should be doing. So right across, with the pressure on the workers as we see, the pressure on all citizens as we see, may quite quickly result into the unrest that we saw, perhaps in the worst of the one that we saw in July.